All right, today I'm going to be going through a carburetor on a 2007 Kawasaki KX 85 motorcycle. This is a two-stroke motorcycle, and we've obviously got the carburetor off the motorcycle already, and I'm going to show you the process of doing that. First thing we're going to do is to remove the throttle cable. Throttle cable runs down this port here, runs all the way down. Then you'll actually be able to see where that throttle cable sits down in this slide here. So I'm going to take the two Phillips screws off. Typically you can pull this the carburetor out of the boots on the motorcycle, the intake boot, and you'll be able to get to your throttle cable that way. Then you can at that time pull these two Phillips screws off the top here. This cap is spring loaded, so just be a little careful. When your throttle cable is running through it, you won't have to worry about this spring loaded cap because this throttle cable will kind of hold everything together. So at this point, with the throttle cable off, we've got this piece separate, we've got our spring, and then we've got a plastic bushing that sits down here. You want to make sure it goes in that order. Again, if we've got the throttle cable on there, it's going to look like this, and then this slide will actually come out with it. And without the throttle cable hooked up, typically you got to use pliers to pull that out. I'm just going to show you how this works here quick. So it's going to sit like this. That throttle cable is going to run all the way down through this bushing here, through this cap, through the middle of this spring. It's going to run down and sit in this part here. And so to remove the throttle cable, what I like to do then is with my right hand, grab this cable. I'm going to pull up on these, on the spring here, and then I'm going to be able to kind of take the tension off this cable because of me collapsing this spring. I'm going to kind of push that throttle cable down. It's going to push it out of this small port here, and then it's going to actually slide up through the center there. You're going to be able to take that slide off separately, this cap and spring. Then you'll be able to pull the throttle cable right out the center of this. Then you have these pieces here. Now, this throttle cable, why we've got this cap pulled here, we've got this plastic bushing. This will only go down one direction, and so it's be really hard to see on this video here, but it's got kind of a cylinder side here, and then it's got more of a gradual turn on this side. It's going to sit down just like that there, and that is going to hold your needle on. And because without this plastic cap, you're just going to be able to push that needle in and out like that. This needle is adjustable, so you want to make sure you check the specs, check your riding conditions, and performance done to your motorcycle. It'll suggest what setting this clip needs to be on. Right now, it's the second clip down. Typically, you find them right in the center there. So slide that needle in there, and since we're not putting this on the motorcycle at this point, I'm just going to take it, I'm going to slide this plastic cap down in there, and then I'm going to set this stuff off to the side here while we go through this carburetor. I'll show you how to put that together then. So we've got the carburetor here, and we've got our choke knob here, and it takes a 14mm wrench to pull this choke knob here, and you can see when you pull it up, it should sit in that position there. What that's doing is allowing air to come through here. So it'll actually blow through this port here, and then with this choke cap up, that fuel will run through, the air will run through this port on this side, running directly into your motor there. So 14mm plastic cap here, so be careful removing these parts, and then you can just slide this out, and your plunger and everything will all be held together. You can see it just like that. If you have problems with it sticking in place, you can buy this assembly all together, or you can pull it apart here and do a little more repair, cleaning up. Make sure you blow through it with compressed air, and then carbon choke cleaner. I prefer this Gum Out brand. Works, I feel like, the best, and you want to make sure that that's moving properly. If it's not being held open like that there, then you're going to have to hold it while your bike warms up, and that's just going to be a pain. So you want to make sure that that is working properly. We've got your fuel line coming in here, and I'll pull this bottom bowl off at this time, and I'll be able to show you where that fuel line comes in. We've got two Phillips screws on the bottom bowl here, and a lot of people wonder why I'm not just pulling this bottom cap here to clean the carburetor. That'll work if you're cleaning out your main jet or swapping that out. but where we want to go through and clean this carburetor completely, I'm going to pull these bottom 2 Phillips screws. So pull those, then this cap at this point will slide off. Like I said earlier, this 17mm cap can be removed, and that'll allow you to get to your main jet there, but it won't allow you to clean out. It'll look like that there. So it doesn't even allow you to get to your pilot jet there. So you can take your main jet out, swap that out, but you can't get to your pilot jet, which is typically what needs cleaned anyways. So your overflow is here, this port here. It comes out this bottom nipple here. It's good to have a vent line, a fuel line on this bottom nipple here, draining below your motor. That way fuel, when it sloshes around in here, comes out this port here, dumps out this bottom nipple. That way that fuel isn't directly landing on that motor. You will want to make sure that you can blow through this with compressed air or carbon choke cleaner to make sure that port is free. If it's not, that fuel, that excess fuel that's bouncing around in there, if it's on the trailer or sitting in the shop or something, and if that vent line, that overflow tube is plugged, your fuel will dump into that motor or into your air box, depending on how your bike is sitting, and cause some potential damage. Next thing, we've got your main jet here. That's going to be this jet right on top here, and your needle that we learned about coming down from here will run directly down into your main jet. So you want to make sure that you've got the correct height on your needle. You want to make sure that you have the correct port size on your main jet. This is a 142 main, and it'll say right on the side of your main jet there. And you want to make sure you have the correct jet for the performance done to your motorcycle or your riding condition or where you're at altitude wise. So that's what it looks like. Blow through it with compressed air, blow through it with carbon choke cleaner. You want to make sure when you're holding it up to light, you want to make sure you can be able to see through that. Next, we've got your pilot jet, which sits right down along here. What I started out saying, a lot of times if your bike sits without being used through the winter or for any amount of time at all, a lot of times these pilot jets get gummed up. They are such a small port in these, or a small orifice, that doesn't take a whole lot of bad fuel sitting in there to plug these up. So you want to make sure, I like to do it at the beginning of the year, just go through and clean these jets up just to make sure you're getting the proper amount of fuel flowing through there. Take carbon choke cleaner, blow through them, take compressed air, blow through it, make sure when you hold it up to light, you can see right through it. Got your main jet holder here, and this takes a 10mm wrench, and you can pull this. Typically, if you've got everything removed, as far as your needle and your main jet, typically you can take compressed air, blow through it, and you won't have to even pull this main jet holder, but it just takes a 10mm, and it slides right out. There's a couple orifices around here. You can make sure that those are cleaned out. But your main jet sits down inside here, so if your main jet gets plugged up, you want to make sure that it's essential that that main jet is clear, and your main jet holder here typically won't get gummed up, but it's good to blow through that as well. Next, we've got your float here. This is an adjustable float with your needle that sits right here. And you take a small pick, small pair of pliers, you can just push that pin through there. If your pin doesn't come out easy, you want to make sure that you don't tap on it with a hammer or something. These posts right here are aluminum, and they break off very easily. So you want to find something to push through there that won't push on these posts, because you could potentially break those off. At that point, you've got to replace your carburetor. So there's your pin there that runs through there, and your float is here along with your needle. You want to check and make sure your rubber tip on this needle is in good condition. Make sure it's not grooved or broke off. Make sure there's no debris down in this port here. And you can take carbon choke cleaner or compressed air, blow through that port as well. Make sure it's cleaned out. And then you've got your fuel coming in here. This brass fitting here will run through, and your fuel will come up directly through here. So you can take carbon choke cleaner or compressed air, blow through this port as well. Make sure that there's nothing blocking that. So then going back together, just make sure that needle doesn't matter which direction it sits. You can put it either way. Slide that onto that pin there. Put your needle down in your seat. Grab this pin, slide it through there, and then make sure that that slides up and down properly. You can hook a fuel line up to this, your fuel in port here, and you can make sure that that fuel is being shut off when you lift your bowl up. That will that'll be the same. It'll simulate the same thing as having that bowl on there and that float level or that fuel level rising. So take your main jet holder then, screw that in. Again, 10 millimeter, tighten this up. You don't have to get it really tight. It is a brass fitting, so they don't need to be extremely tight. Your 142 main jet can go on at that point with your, takes a 6 millimeter wrench to tighten that up. And then your pilot jet, and again, blow through there, make sure you can see through it, slide that down in there. Make sure you've got a good screwdriver on there. That's not gonna round off that head. Otherwise, next time that'll be a bear getting out of there. And if you own the bike for any amount of time at all, there will be a next time. So then, after you got that all situated, got everything tightened down like it should be, take your bowl here. And it takes a little bit of finagling to get around. You've got your overflow port here that's got to sit right in between your float and this cap here. So you kind of got to push that around a little bit. You don't want to put pressure on it. You don't want to break any parts, but you just got to wiggle it around to get to the right spot. 2 Phillips screws in on the bottom there. Slide those in. Screw those down. And again, you don't have to really torque those down. Just make sure they're snug. One more thing, make sure that this O-ring on this bowl is good before going back together. It's pretty common for those to start leaking if they dry out or rip. Alright, 17 millimeter, got that cap tightened up. Now we can flip this over. We can put our slide on here along with our spring and our cap and our choke. So slide's only going to go down one direction. Just make sure your needle goes down into your the port down below there. Make sure your spring sits down into that plastic cap that I showed you earlier. And then you can set this cap, make sure this spring sits around that area. Make sure that gasket is good on here. Then take your 2 Phillips, slide these on. And we can take our choke then, spin that on. 14 millimeter, snug this up. It's plastic cap. Then we've got our idle adjust and our air fuel screw here. Idle adjust is here. You can typically do it with your finger and your thumb there, twist it clockwise, raise your idle, and essentially what that's doing is pushing that slide open. And counterclockwise would be lowering it. And then we've got your air fuel screw here. Takes a flat screwdriver, and you can pull this out. But before you do that, I'd make sure you keep track of what position this air fuel screw is. And to do that, you turn it in and count how many turns in it is. So half turn, 1.5, 2. So this is 2 turns out. So then to clean it, you just screw it all the way out. You've got a spring on here, so you want to make sure you keep track of that, but it's not spring load. It's not going to go flying on you. You can dump it out like that, blow through there with compressed air. Take and make sure there's no grooves, no debris down in here, and you can actually see where this air fuel screw goes through. It goes through this port here. So clean that out really good, and then going back together, seat it all the way down. You don't have to use a lot of force, but just make sure it's completely seated. And then you screw it out again. There's half turn 1 and a half turn 2. That is the carburetor on a 2007 Kawasaki KX85 two-stroke motorcycle. If you've liked this video, you found it helpful, please subscribe, like, and share. If you've got more questions on this motorcycle, let me know and I can do other videos on it. Thanks for watching.